the CAT 2019 analysis. We are looking at, hi Vishal, welcome to the session. So we're looking at the CAT 2019 paper, and we are looking at what aspects of that paper we are uh, were good, were poor, were difficult, were easy, etc. in the context of CAT 18, CAT 17, and other papers. And we're going to have a look at these in the context of of our of the discussions with respect to uh, cutoffs, etc. of this paper. So we'll be discussing this in three parts, and I would do a small qualification before I start the discussion, and that qualification is that I'm going to talk only about slot 2 because slot 2 is the paper I took. So I'm going to talk only about slot 2, the slot 2 paper. And to start off, we'll first start off with the VRC section. Then we'll talk about the DILR section, and then we'll talk about the quant section. So if you look at the VRC section of CAT 2019, I keep going back to the number, to the 2018 value. So as you must have heard, the verbal, the English part, the English section was much tougher than 2017 and 18 was. Specifically the reading comprehension, which is around 70% of the paper, had increased its level of difficulty for two reasons. One reason was the passage per se. The passage's quality were normal. I mean, if you talk about the passages, the quality of the passage, the complexity of the passage, three out of the five passages were normal of this level that you would see in CAT 17 or CAT 18. But one passage was tough and one passage was very tough. So it was very difficult to do both these passages. You required a very high level of skill to be able to do that, to be able to do that well. And this obviously had an impact on what people were doing, or the number of questions people were doing in the exam. Then maybe I should write on the other side. So I'll bring this down a little bit so that you can see this. Right. So apart from that, you also had a very strong um, questions, or quality of questions. The quality of the questions with the closeness of the options. Very high closeness of options, and good quality, a lot of inferential questions, etc. So that made 24 out of the 34 questions pretty tough, effectively. Even for the simpler passages, the question quality was very high. When you talk about the verbal ability section of this, the VA section of the paper consisted of three questions of parajumbles, three questions of odd man out, and four questions of summaries. So the quality of the summary again was higher than last year's. So these questions were higher. The odd man out quality was same as last year, and the parajumbles were easier. At least I'm talking about slot 2 here. So this was the basic nature of the paper, and if you look at this nature then, and try to break it down into what it will do to cutoffs. So typically the verbal cutoff, if you look at the CAT 2017 paper and the 2018 exam, in both these years, 2017 and 2018 exams, in both these years, uh, the verbal ability section, VRC section, was more or less standard. The VRC section was more or less standard in the sense that the scores did not vary too much. So in both these years, around 75 marks would give you a 99 percentile score. Right? This was so it did not vary too much from those numbers over the last couple of years. But I would think that this year, because of the increased toughness of the RCs and the summaries, we are going to go down a little bit on the 99 percentile score, and we might reach somewhere around 68 70, maybe even 65 70. Although 65 will be too low a score to get a 99 percentile, but I would think around 70 would be the there will be a 5 mark drop. That's the guesstimate, of course. The real proof of the pudding comes in the eating. So when the results come, we'll exactly know. And these are just guesstimates, and anybody's guesses are as good as mine. Although my experience over the last 15-20 years of taking the paper helps me while solving it, helps me understand how much control you have over the questions, and that gives you an idea of how difficult people are finding it to solve. So, my thought process would essentially be that around the scale score of around 70 marks would be the 99 percentile value in in verbal ability and in VRC, in the VRC section, and this would essentially mean approximately a 5 to 7 mark drop across the board on the VRC scores. So that would be my guesstimate about the VRC scores. Right. So that's the first part of this. Now, talking about data and predation. Now, DILR has had a very strange uh, reports this year, in the sense that the slot 1 DILR was very easy compared to the last year. If not very easy, at least we can say that it was easier than compared to last year. You can say it was easier compared to last year. But slot 2, so if you look at DILR, how things have moved over the last 2 years, uh, the DILR in 2017 was tougher than the DILR in 2018 across both slots. But if you ask me about slot 1 is apparently, I have not seen the slot 1 paper, so I can't comment clearly, but apparently, based on what people are reporting, the data and predation logical reasoning of 2019 was easier than the last 2 years on slot 1. But I have taken slot 2, and in slot 2, the data and predation logical reasoning was actually much tougher than even the 2017 paper. So it was basically divided into 3 easy sets. There was one set on doctor's appointments, that was easy. There was a second set on rainfall, that was easy, and there was a third set on revenue and costs, which was on the easier side. So these 3 sets were on the easier side. There were two sets that would be classified as moderate to tough. If I remember correctly, one of them was the team formation set. The second one was the set on team formation set, and the second one was the set on subjects and exam paper. But three sets would belong to the very tough category. There was a set on a shooting competition, basically a tournament set, which was quite tough to analyze. It had too many variables. There was a set on coins and purses with a structure given. That was also very tough to analyze under pressure, especially. And the third one was a set on percentages and a mixture of a Venn diagram and a table, where you had to make both talking about preferences of people between two candidates and also two proposals. So these three sets were very tough to handle, and they were amongst the toughest sets the cat has ever set, according to me. At least that's what I got a feeling of inside the exam. And if you look at the CAT 18 paper, for example, any slot, the typical breakdown was 4, 2, or 3, and 1. So the difference between these two papers was, here it was 7 sets were doable in the CAT 18 paper, and you had only 5 sets doable in the CAT 18 paper, in the CAT 19 paper, right? So given the fact that this has been the trend, now if you look at the 99 percentile score, if you look at the 99 percentile score in the CAT 19 paper, if you try to compare it, I had 100 percentile in DI last year. In CAT 18, my score was around 75 in CAT 18 at 100 percentile. I would think that the 100 percentile will drop by around 7, 8, 10 marks here. So, but that will not be an absolute drop of 10 marks across the board, because as you go down, there'll be more people at every level. But the top 12 might be the top 12 or 18, whatever they give 100 percentile for. That would typically, I would think, would be in the range of 65 to 70 maybe. And 99 percentile will drop, I guess, in the 40 into the 40s. There'll be a 5 mark drop essentially on the 99 percentile score. I'm not very sure of what the 99 percentile was last year, but it would drop by around 5 marks over the last year's score, the 99 percentile value in data interpretation, right? So if you look at net, a 5 mark drop on verbal and a 5 mark drop on data interpretation in terms of the sectional scores. I'm talking about slot 2. Now that is one thing which is going to be interesting to see, is if you compare slot 1 versus slot 2. Slot 1, what I have heard, that all the 8 sets were doable in DI. As I said, I'm qualifying this by the fact that I've not seen the paper, so I really don't know. But slot 1, all the 8 sets were doable. Slot 2, maybe only 5 sets were doable in under time pressure. So one interesting thing to watch from the CAT viewpoint is the degree of normalization they will do while the degree of normalization they'll do while creating the scaled score from the raw score. So I would think that slot 2 should they should increase it, but one does not know the exact process through which they come out with the scale, so one can't guess directly. So but there should be some normalization happening with slot 2 going up a little bit, because statistically I think there'll be a score difference between slot 1 and slot 2, based on at least on what I've heard about slot 2 and the reports of the slot 2 paper. So this was the second section, DILR, right? My prediction would be 40s, late 40s, early 50s would become a 99 percentile here, right? 5 mark drop from last year. I don't remember the exact value right now, but I think a 5 mark drop from last year on the 99 percentile in the at least in the slot 2 scores for data and predation, right? Although I mean, if you look at the sets, they were more or less predictable in terms of what they carried on. There was a set on Venn diagram, but again, this was not a completely Venn diagram based set. It was mix of Venn diagram and tabular form, and lot of sets with a lot of multiple possibility situations building up, a lot of cross reference data, etc. happening, right? Only three sets were straight, where you didn't have to bother too much about multiple possibilities while solving, right? So that was data and predation. Now coming to the quants, definitely the verdict is quite simple here. The quants was easier than last year. The quants was easier than last year, and hence since the quants was easier, obviously, but it was tougher than 2017. So if you look at the quant section, 2017, if you look at the quant section, 2017, 2019, and 2018. This was the difficulty level analysis with respect to where the numbers, where what level of difficulty was happening in what section, in this section, in the quant section. Now, having said that, there was a change of emphasis. So CAT 17 and 18 portion wise in quants were very dependent on arithmetic and very dependent on algebra, which I call as block 2 3 in my books and block 5 in my books. So if you look at the 17 and 18 papers, arithmetic was close to approximately 13 14 questions. Algebra was close to around 8 to 9 questions. Geometry was 5 to 7 questions. And there was a very small sprinkling of number systems. Maybe just 2 or 3 questions on number systems were there. So this emphasis definitely changed in 2019, where number systems made a comeback, a strong comeback. And this was something that I was expecting before the exam itself, that number systems will be a feature of this paper, because CAT has this tendency, and this is something you need to understand about the CAT, especially those of you who are preparing for CAT 20 now, and you're looking at CAT 2020. The moment you get too comfortable about the paper, the moment you get too comfortable about the CAT, it has a tendency to surprise you. Right? The moment you get too comfortable about the CAT, it has a tendency to surprise you it the moment you start telling yourself, or the moment you start hearing about the cat कि आजकल ऐसा नहीं होता है, this is something that used to happen earlier. So what happened earlier always has a tendency of coming back. And leading up to the exam, I was getting this feeling, and I told my students this, that beware of number systems. It's going to make a comeback because it's one of the favorite areas of the cat. Anyway, if you look at it historically, you look at a 15-20 year perspective of the cat, and you pick up the number of questions coming from various areas. Especially in the offline version of the cat, number systems was the biggest area. There have been years in which out of 50 questions in the CAT, 18-20 questions have been number systems, right? So, having said that, when you're talking about this year, so a lot of people across the country had underprepared number systems. I had students coming up to me telling me that sir, number systems ठीक से नहीं कर रहे हैं, बाकी कर ले रहे हैं. I don't have enough time. So I used to warn them that there could be a comeback, and there was indeed a comeback. Although, of course, while solving the paper, you don't get to know the exact number of questions, but fair sprinkling. Maybe around 7 to 10 questions came back from number systems. Arithmetic was still there. Arithmetic maybe had come down to around 10. Maybe it was still 13, 14. Arithmetic was there all over the place. Geometry was again 7, 8 questions. Algebra went down. The number of questions in algebra went down to around 4, 5 only. Right? And permutation combination was completely missing. The block 6 area was completely missing in this year's paper. So, where are the numerical predictions for 2019 with respect to the quant section? So, again, see, my estimates are based on essentially my own understanding of how difficult you found the experience of solving the paper. That's what I typically judge a paper on, and in the context of that, in quants, my thought was that, as I said, easier than 2007, tougher than 2017, easier than 2018 and 2019. So if you look at the numbers, the 99 percentile in quants, if I remember correctly, in 2017 was at approximately 75 marks, and the 99 percentile in 2018 was at around 55 marks. So there was a huge drop last year, because 20 mark drop on a 100 mark paper for the 99th percentile. 99th percentile basically on a ballpark estimate, a thumb rule estimate, 2,000 people get a 99 percentile in each section. So to be in the top 2,000 in 2017, you had to score 75 marks. To be in the 99 percentile range in 2018, you had to score 55 marks only. So there was a difference of 20 marks effectively drop wise over 99 over 2008 17 to 18. So in 2019, my estimate is that this will go back by around 10 marks. So it's going to go back to 65 approximately. That's what I would feel. So the 5 mark drop in verbal and the 5 mark drop in DILR will get offset by the 10 mark increase in quants, and this offsetting will effectively keep the cutoffs more or less similar. In case there is a more than 5 mark drop here, maybe 7 mark drop and 7 mark drop, there might be a 5 mark drop in the 99 percentile score overall. So if I remember correctly, 150, 155 was the range of the 99 percentile last year. So my prediction for 99 percentile for this year will be around 145 to 150. Although I might be off by 5-10 marks, but this is the logic on which I'm building. The whole is essentially a sum of the parts. So if you can predict the parts, you can predict the whole kind of thing. And the 95 percentile value would essentially be in the 120 125 range. right? So that would be the 99, 95 percentile value. The 99 percentile value would typically be in the 145, 150. Maybe it go to 155, remains the same as last year. So this is the range I'm expecting for the 99 percentile. 120 to 125 is the range I'm expecting for the 95 percentile. And at around 100 marks, you can expect somewhere around the 85 to 90 percentile score. So that's roughly what my predictions of this paper would be. Now, to wind up, before I wind up, what are the learnings for CAT 20? What are the learnings for CAT 20? You need to up your game for verbal. You need to go through a little bit more. Uh, you need to go through a little bit more, and in fact, not just a little bit more, significantly more tougher passages. You need to practice reading comprehension a lot more. That's one preparation change. I mean, of course, CAT preparation typically is on a central agenda always, but going from year to year, you do make 5% deviations on the dimensions of the paper. In DI, the emphasis will be to be able to look difficult questions in the face, will be to look at difficult questions in the face directly one to one. That will be the objective. You should be able to see difficult questions in the face, stare them down, and be able to get through them. Put yourself through the ringer and be able to get through the solution on that. So as I said, this year, even for a very well prepared student, the degree of control in a lot of these sets was difficult to execute. So you have to make sure that you learn this thing and create a belief which will tell you what you can do, and create the belief that will take you through these difficult sets, because you'll again in CAT 20, I'm sure you're going to face sets which are going to be puzzles, which are going to be difficult for you to solve. Multiple possibilities, getting through multiple possibilities is going to be a complete battle. And DILR now has become a battle every year. So that's the second part. And the third part of the game in quants, the big message is that balance your preparation out. So just because there is no permutation competition this year, don't underestimate that area. You're going to have questions on you should be ready for questions on permutation combinations this year on in CAT 20. So balance your prep. Don't overdo individual sections. Balance your prep on all the 6 blocks of my book, and make sure that you are ready for a tougher paper. You're ready for the same paper. You're ready for a paper which is easier. In verbal, I don't think it can get tougher than this. So next year, either the same level or below this. Be ready for both. And DILR, again, I don't think it can go tougher than this. So either the same level, I'm talking about slot 2, either the same level or an easier level of DILR is what you're going to see next year. So your preparation should cover all these bases. If it remains the same, it should work to your advantage. If the verbal becomes easier, it should work to your advantage. DILR remains the same, it should be working to your advantage. It becomes easier, it should work to your advantage. Quants gets tougher, your preparation should give you an advantage. It remains the same, your preparation should give you an advantage. It goes below, your preparation should give you an advantage. So whichever combination of these 12 papers comes out, there are essentially 12 possible combinations, starting with verbal same, DILR same, quant tougher, verbal same, DILR same, quants same, So there are 12 paper combinations possible according to me for next year. Although this is too early to speak that, and over the year we'll get to feel cat prep around the country, and then you get a better gut feel of what's going to happen. But your preparation for CAT 20 should be about all these 12 papers, and you should have an advantage whichever combination they use. Right? As I said, I don't think DILR can go tougher than this year, and I don't think verbal can go tougher than this year. So these two will remain either same or below, and quants can go back to toughness of 18, remain the same or come down. So either of these three things are going to happen, and so with that I'll wind up. Thanks a lot for listening in, and all the best to you for whatever you're doing. Thank you so much. Bye bye.